How hot is it outside?
It's 41 degrees out. You should probably turn on the AC, you dingus.
Man, Siri's mean. That is a good idea, though. Let me just grab the remote. Ah, here we go. Ah, that's right. I can't actually see this stupid thing. Thankfully, I've got HomeKit.
8:01 p.m. Control center. Airplane mode. Living room tall lamp. My studio Acura smart plug. Bedroom Sensibo AC controller. Off. Sensibo 8. Now. Current mode. Off. Picker item. Heat. 1 of 4. 1 of 4. Current mode. Heat. Pick. Cool. 2 of 4.
That's better. Greetings Internet, it's Dustin again with my HomeKit Home, bringing you all things Apple HomeKit, from news to how-tos to product reviews, just like this one. So if that's something that you're into, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on any of our new videos as soon as they're released. So let's be real for a minute. A lot of our connected home interest is because it's just so damn cool. And I'm not knocking that, but the smart home can actually change our lives. Now, I don't want to be overly dramatic here, but I can kind of say that the Sensibo Air for me is one of those devices. Now, I haven't talked much about it here on the channel, and I'm not sure why, because it really is one of the reasons I have such an interest in the smart home. But you see, I'm legally blind, and Apple and HomeKit have actually given me back a lot of autonomy here around the house. Take, for example, this stupid AC controller. I can't actually make out the screen, nor can I read the labels on the buttons, making it absolutely useless. But with the Sensibo Air and HomeKit, my AC is now accessible, and it has literally changed my life. And I'd like to share that with you today. So what we'll do in this video is we'll unbox the Sensibo Air, we'll look at some of its hardware features, we'll get it set up and look at some of the software features, we'll get it set up with HomeKit and see what we can do with it there. Then I'll give you a demo of how I use it as a blind dude. Then I've got some extra special advanced automations using the Home Plus app. Then we'll come back and I'll give you my overall impressions of the Sensibo Air. Also, after watching the video, if you're thinking about getting one of these for yourself, consider using the link in the description box just below that like button. While Sensibo were kind enough to provide us with a review unit for this video free of charge, it's definitely not a sponsored video, nor did they have any idea of the type of content that I would be making, and they're seeing it at the same time as you. So there's that. Well, enough of the jibber jabber, let's see what comes in the box. Alright, let's break this thing down. The Sensibo Air is an IR air conditioning and heat pump controller that allows for remote access automation, scheduling, timers, and event monitoring. It does have built-in temperature and humidity sensors, but at this time neither of those are actually exposed to HomeKit. It also has 2 different radios on board. It has a 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi radio for control, as well as a Bluetooth low energy chip for setting up the device in the Sensibo app. It does require a 5-volt 1-amp power supply over micro USB and will work with voltages from 110 to 240, so just about everybody's covered. As you can see, this is a very simple unboxing, and we really don't have any paperwork other than some instructions telling us to open the app, so let's go set it up. Oh, hey! So in many parts of the world, including the US, we're starting to see a shift away from central heating and cooling systems to mini-split systems. While I won't go into the specific differences because I'm definitely not an HVAC specialist, essentially what you have is a decentralized heating and cooling system that doesn't rely on one thermostat or a couple of thermostats in your home, but rather on room-specific air handlers that have their own thermostats and are controlled by IR remotes. This is where the Sensibo Air comes in, allowing you to replace your AC's remote and bridging it to your smartphone. Now, setup of the Sensibo Air is dead simple, and in fact on their website they claim it can be done in less than a minute. Unfortunately, you do need to set up an account with Sensibo, but once you've done that and given the app the proper permissions, we'll hop in and tap Add Device, then we'll choose Sensibo Air, we'll give it some power, we'll scan the QR code that's on the bottom of the device, we'll choose a location for our home, we'll choose a room that the Sensibo Air is in, and boom, we're done. Well, not quite. So we'll look at how to get it set up in HomeKit in a minute, but first we need to get our AC connected to the Sensibo Air. Now, I already had mine set up, so it's already configured, but changing the remote type is the exact same process. So go ahead and grab your stupid AC remote and tap Next. Then point your stupid AC remote at the Sensibo Air and press the power button. The Sensibo Air should pretty immediately recognize the remote, and you'll get a confirmation of this in the app, and tap Done. And that's really all there is to it. So while we're here, let's go ahead and check out some of the features of the Sensibo Air in the Sensibo app. So as you might expect from a device like the Sensibo Air, we do have remote access for our temperature controls, but depending on your particular unit, we have a ton of other options. In my case, for my mini split, I do have access to all of the heating and cooling modes, as well as all of the different fan speeds and the swing and horizontal swing of the blade, so I can control in which direction the air is flowing. We also have Climate React, which is essentially a temperature-based automation. So you can set your threshold temperature, and whenever the temperature sensor inside of the Sensibo Air recognizes that it's reached that temperature, it'll perform whatever action you set it to do. So if that's heating or cooling, whichever mode and whatever fan speed, until you reach that desired temperature, whether it's cooling or heating. That's pretty nice. We also have a timer, so we can turn off the device after a specific amount of time, and we can toggle the display LED, which is also quite nice. One thing that I did not like about the Sensibo Air is that the filter check and the health check options are a paid pro version, so you will need a subscription for that. For me, in my opinion, at the price point for this device, those two things should definitely be included. We also have access to scheduling, which is something that we're familiar with as HomeKit users. And we also have an event log of who turned on the device at what time and at what temperature. That's pretty nice if you're sharing this among different members of a family. And then we have our settings, of course, which is where we get into our HomeKit setup process. And now is as good a time as any to see how that works. Since the Sensibo Air takes advantage of software authentication, we need to find our HomeKit code in the Sensibo app by tapping on Settings, choosing Apple HomeKit, and then here we can either screenshot our HomeKit code or we can simply memorize it. Now let's head over to the Apple Home app and get it set up there. First, we'll tap the plus button along the top and choose Add Accessory, and then we'll scan our QR code from our screenshot if you're using a separate device, or we can just simply enter the HomeKit code manually. Then we'll select the Sensibo Air and it will begin porting over all of your Wi-Fi credentials. After that, it's a standard HomeKit accessory setup process. You'll choose the room, you'll choose the name of the device, you'll get some suggested automations. Once you've gone through all that, we'll tap Done and the device has been added to your HomeKit home. Now let's look at some of the features that we get with Apple's Home app. I have to say there's not a whole lot going on with the Sensibo Air, at least in Apple's Home app. So it is exposed to HomeKit as a thermostat, and as such we can adjust our temperatures from left to right on our sliding scale there. We can also adjust our heating and cooling modes, although we don't have as many modes exposed to HomeKit as we do in the Sensibo app, but it is what it is. We also don't have access to our fan speeds nor our swing controls, and this is really a limitation of the thermostat product category within HomeKit itself. Jumping over to our settings now, we can see that we can actually see our current relative humidity, but neither the humidity nor the temperature sensors are actually exposed to HomeKit at this time. We can add the Sensibo Air to our favorites, and I actually did a video recently on how to add quick access home controls to Control Center, so I'll leave a link in the description box and in the iCard up above if you want to check that one out. Looking at our automations, for some reason Apple still thinks that we don't need to use temperature nor humidity information to trigger automations. Why this is, I don't know. We can do this in third-party apps, and we'll look at that here in a moment. But we can use things like motion, time of day, people coming and going to trigger automations that control the unit's different modes and the temperature control. By nature, the HomePod and Siri are pretty accessible for blind folk, and of course we can control our AC by saying something like, "Hey Siri, set the AC to 25 degrees, and that works in a pinch, but it's not always appropriate to shout out across the room. So here's how I actually control my AC unit using my iPhone without actually being able to see the screen. I use an accessibility feature baked into just about every Apple product called VoiceOver. VoiceOver essentially reads or describes all of the different visual elements on the screen, allowing people with visual impairments to better access their devices. Here on my iPhone, I access it by triple tapping the power button, and then, as you can hear, just by simply moving my finger around the screen or by swiping left or right, I have access to all of my HomeKit accessories, including the Sensibo Air. And I'll let VoiceOver take over from here.
Bedroom Q Smart. Q bedroom flower bot. Off. Bedroom mood light. Bedroom pure flow. Bedroom Sensibo AC controller. 27 degrees. Off. Bedroom. Now. 27 degrees. Current mode. Off. Picker height. Heat. 1 of 4. Current mode. Cool. 2 of 4. 26 degrees. Target value. 26 degrees. Adjusted. 26.50 degrees. 27 degrees. 26 degrees. 25.50 degrees, 25 degrees.
And that's really all there is to it. Super simple, but incredibly empowering. Now, I'll be honest and admit that I don't use VoiceOver and HomeKit together all that often because I tend to use automations. And here are some advanced automations with the Sensibo Air using the Home Plus app. Now, we could set up these advanced automations using any number of third-party HomeKit apps like the Eve for HomeKit app or Controller for HomeKit, but today I'm using the Home Plus 5 app, and we do so by tapping the plus button at the top right from our automation screen, and we'll begin by adding an event trigger. I'm doing something simple like a motion detector detecting motion, so essentially if someone walks into the room. Now, this is really no different from what we can do in Apple's Home app, but something that is a bit different is the ability to add temperature and humidity based conditions to our automations. So for example, if someone walks into the room and the temperature is greater than or equal to 28 degrees Celsius, then our automation is triggered. In this case, the AC will cool to 25.5 degrees Celsius. So as you can see, this is a pretty simple condition-based automation, but it makes things a little bit more conducive to what I'm trying to do in that specific moment. And these can get extraordinarily complicated with any number of different conditions and event triggers, and we can really start to hone in on the things that are going to help us have a smarter home. Okay, so 3 quick pros. First, getting the Sensibo Air set up, connecting your AC unit to it, using it in the Sensibo app, getting it over to HomeKit, and using it there are all dead simple and work exactly as they should. Second, in the 2 months that I've been testing this device, it hasn't once dropped off my Wi-Fi network, which is a huge plus for me, especially considering I use automations and depend on this thing to just work. And lastly, this thing is ridiculously small, meaning you can put it just about anywhere.
That's what she said. No time, but she did. No time!
As long as the IR laser beam has a clear line of sight to your AC unit. And yes, I know it's not frickin' laser beam. Now, I didn't find a lot of cons with the Sensibo Air, but the one I did find is pretty significant. At the time of recording, the Sensibo Air is on Amazon for $149 in the US. You can get it cheaper directly from Sensibo, but there's not much of a price difference there. And especially considering that my mini split was around $250 installed, that's a pretty big ask. So I mentioned at the top of the video that it gave me back a lot of independence, but for that price, I might be willing to ask my wife for a bit of help. So what did I leave out? What questions do you have? Let me know in the comment section down below. Also below the video in the description box, you'll find a link to pick up the Sensibo Air if you're interested in it, and you'll find links to our blog over at myhomekithome.com, as well as links to our social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you're interested in more HomeKit product reviews, you can check out this playlist here, or you can check out this video here. And for even more HomeKit related content, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so that you're notified whenever we release new videos. Well folks, I gots to be moseying, but we'll see you in the next video. Take care.